My title today, are you ready? Politicians lied, semicolon, black people died. Woo! Put my jacket on because it was too cold while I was working. Now it's too hot. Hey! You're listening to Truth in the Afternoon. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Harris. 833-212-1017 is the number. I was on JS Online today, and I heard and read whether listening to the newspaper and reading the radio. Anyway, PolitiFact. Did Democrats want to expand slavery pre-Civil War while Republicans oppose it? By Laura Schulte, and it was published at 9:54 yesterday morning. So they talk about Nikki Haley failing to use the word slavery when discussing the cause of the Civil War and the fallout and all that stuff that included. And it says the fallout from the misstep has had lots of politicals talking about it, including former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. So I'm trying to wonder what tweaked PolitiFact to actually follow this. And so as I went through, it said that Democrats wanted to expand slavery into Western territories. Walker posted on X December 28, 2023. Republicans opposed it. Walker's point seems to be that today's voters should take that into account when making decisions now, maybe later. Okay. So the problem I have with that is, number one, I don't know what this is, journalism or opinion-based, but why do I care what you think or interpret what Walker was trying to say? So, but this question is largely one for and from the history books, and the narrow claim does not provide great insight for the political picture today, so we're setting aside the truthometer in favor of a deeper dive into history. And so she goes on to talk about Walker's spokesperson, pointed out the Democrats wanted to spread slavery west. Abraham Lincoln was the first successful Republican nominee for president, blah, blah, blah. And then write some of the things that they wrote in the email about the Confederacy. And I'm skipping through it because I have guests coming in from the Morgan County Sheriff's Office. But I digress. Jefferson Davis served as the president of the Confederacy. Previously, he'd been elected to the House of Representatives and Senate as a Democrat from Mississippi. His vice president was Alexander Hamilton Stevens, a Democrat from Georgia. And it goes on and it talks about that in the Missouri Compromise of 1812, divided the country, pro-slavery, anti-slavery in the North. And in 1854, Democrats in Congress passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which included a provision that would allow residents in the new Kansas and Nebraska territories to decide whether or not they wanted to allow slavery. And the act effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise of 1820, set into motion the creation of what's now known as the Republican Party, my words. So Republicans wanted to stop a Democratic piece of legislation, but were Democrats really a pro-slavery party? Well, she wrote kinda, depending on where they lived. Well, that's everything. So it shouldn't be kinda, it should be yes, and here are the places where they were. Historically, we need to understand that in many cases, it came down to what was good for you. She writes, while the majority of Democrats did support expanding slavery, they weren't exactly united in that support. That comment doesn't make any sense. The divide wasn't between the Democrats and newly created Republicans. The USA Today fact check pointed out it was the division between the north and the southern portions of the country that fueled the Civil War. Huh? The majority of people that were in the South were Democrats. That's why they had slaves. But anyway, and I'm not being pro-Republican. I'm talking about anyway. Matthew Karp, an associate professor for history at Princeton University, probably a place I wouldn't look at to talk about slavery, pointed out that while Northern Democrats didn't really want the expansion of slavery, they remained a part of a national party whose Southern members did want the expansion. The issue here is, did they fight against it? because otherwise it's tacit consent. So you can use semantics as your argument to say whether or not Democrats were pro-slavery, because I'm pretty sure, on assumption and majority, this person leans to the left. It says, as a compromise, and I don't know that, I should probably have to ask Ms. Schultz. As a compromise, Northern Democratic leaders like Stephen Douglas sought to rally the party behind the idea of popular sovereignty, that is, letting the white settlers of a new Western territory decide to feature slavery one way or the other. He said in a January 5th, 2024 email. In practice, Republicans argued, accurately in my view, this amounted to permission for slavery to expand, first to the Kansas territory and then to other Western states. And then, so for Karp, the geographical location of Democrats really didn't influence their choices. Their political party did. So it goes on and it talks to Catherine Magar, associate professor of journalism in the School of Journalism and Mass Comm at UW-Madison, who's affiliated with the Department of History, pointed out the regional differences too, and then that there was a shift since the Civil War for both parties. One example is the stance on equal rights. And so they go on and on and on and on to say, but in looking at those positions, well, let me put it like this. She said, in today's political world, affiliations have shifted. And of course, now that slavery is illegal in the United States, neither party supports its expansion. So yes, Democrats supported expanding slavery at the outbreak of the Civil War and during the Civil War too, but that's weird. Did they just stop automatically when they lost? No. And Republicans' anti-slavery position stemmed from their geographical position in the northern portion of the country. But in looking at these positions and seeing how the parties have changed since the 1800s, which in my point of view, they really haven't. I think that's some revisionist history that we like to paint to cover up the Republican Party idiocy and the Democratic Party idiocy. But she writes, but in looking at these positions and seeing how the parties have changed since the 1800s, voters have a new set of facts to look at, including Republicans and Democrats' stances on civil rights, for instance. So you wrote this whole thing just to draw the line at civil rights without explaining it. If you look at what happened during the Civil War, there's only one real thing you have to really understand. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat. It didn't matter if you were a Republican today. Didn't matter if you were a Democrat. Didn't matter if you were a Republican in 1860. The bottom line is no matter what either side says, politicians lied and Black people died.
And that is Dr. Ken's Truth on the new 1017 The Truth.
Calling all Black-owned business and entrepreneurs. The award-winning 1017 The Truth and Associated Bank have teamed up for our Black Business Give Back. Go to Black Business Give Back.